Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started with today's story. It was a cold evening in New York City. The streets were slick with rain, and the air had a sharp chill that made you want to run for cover. People scurried along, their umbrellas battling against the wind, their coats pulled tight to their bodies. But amidst the hustle and bustle of the busy city, one figure stood out. There, by the streetlight, under the dim glow of the lamp, stood a little girl. Her thin, wet coat clung to her frail frame, and her shoes were soaked through, the rain running off them in small streams. She shivered uncontrollably, clutching a ragged scarf around her neck, her face pale and streaked with tears. The city passed her by, no one stopping, no one noticing. It was just another night in the busy, indifferent world of New York. But then, a car pulled up. The engine of the sleek black sedan hummed as it stopped at the red light. Inside sat Ethan Carrington, a successful CEO, a man who had everything one could dream of: wealth, power, influence. But he felt nothing but an empty ache in his chest. He'd just left a long day of meetings and business calls, his mind swirling with numbers, projections, and deadlines. Yet, as he sat in his car, staring out at the city, he couldn't help but feel a deep loneliness, a feeling that had settled inside him for years. The light turned green, and Ethan's driver began to pull forward. But something stopped him. Something in the corner of his eye caught his attention. The little girl. She was standing there, her shoulders shaking, her small body almost invisible in the sea of umbrellas and coats. Ethan's heart did something unexpected. It skipped a beat. He felt a pull, a desire to help, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Without thinking, he ordered the driver to stop. The car idled at the curb as Ethan stepped out, his expensive suit now drenched in the rain. He approached the girl slowly, cautiously, as if unsure of what to do. The girl looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. She didn't ask for help. She didn't beg. Instead, she simply whispered, "Please, don't let them hurt us." Her voice was small, fragile, like the wind itself could carry it away. Ethan froze. Something in her words struck him hard, deep in his chest. He crouched down in front of her, his knees hitting the wet pavement. The cold didn't matter. He reached out and gently took her trembling hand. She flinched at first, but then she relaxed, as if she was too tired to be scared anymore. "You're safe now," Ethan said softly, his voice barely audible over the rain. "I won't let anyone hurt you." As he spoke those words, he knew something had changed. He didn't understand why, but he couldn't just leave her there, alone in the rain. He lifted her into his arms, feeling how light and fragile she was, as if she could break at any moment. He motioned for the driver to open the door, and without a word, they both got in. The car drove off into the night, heading toward the nearest hospital. Ethan held the girl close, her small hand still clutching the sleeve of his wet coat. He looked down at her, wondering who she was, what had brought her here. But for now, all he knew was that he couldn't just walk away. He had to help. And in that moment, a spark of something long buried inside him began to flicker back to life. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. As the sleek black sedan pulled away from the curb, Ethan Carrington couldn't shake the image of the little girl out of his mind. He had taken her into his car without a second thought, her small body trembling in his arms, her face pale from the cold and fear. It wasn't the kind of thing he would normally do. He was the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country, a man who had built his empire on calculated decisions and business acumen. Yet here he was, holding a girl he had never met, her life as fragile as the rain that continued to pour outside. The car sped through the empty streets of the city, the soft hum of the engine, the only sound in the quiet interior. The girl had fallen asleep in his arms, her small head resting against his chest. He could feel the warmth of her body, a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in his own heart. He glanced down at her, unsure of what to do next. Who was she? Why was she out there alone, in the rain, at this hour? As the car turned a corner, Ethan's mind wandered back to his own childhood. He had grown up in a modest home, raised by a single mother, who had worked 2 jobs just to put food on the table. He remembered the long, lonely nights when he had wished for someone to help him, someone to show him that there was more to life than survival. He had never asked for help, never shown weakness, but he had always longed for someone to care. And now, here he was, holding this little girl, a stranger, someone who needed him, in the same way he had once needed someone. The thought made his chest tighten. He had built a life of wealth and success, but at what cost? He had pushed everyone away, focused only on his career, thinking that money and power would fill the emptiness inside him. But it hadn't. The emptiness was still there, gnawing at him. As the car pulled up to the hospital, Ethan was jolted out of his thoughts. He looked down at the girl, who was now stirring, her eyes fluttering open. She looked up at him, her gaze wide and confused, as if she didn't understand what was happening. Where are we?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan smiled gently, trying to reassure her. "You're safe now," he said softly. "We're at the hospital. You're going to be all right." The girl blinked at him, her eyes still clouded with fear. "But I have to go home. My mom's waiting for me." Ethan's heart sank. He had known there was something more to her story. "Your mom is sick, right?" he asked gently. The girl nodded slowly. "She's really sick. I have to bring her food." Ethan's heart broke at the simplicity of her words. A little girl, out in the cold, in the middle of the night, because she was trying to take care of her sick mother. He reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from her forehead. "You don't have to worry about that right now," he said. "We'll make sure you're taken care of." The nurse approached them, her eyes quickly scanning the situation. She didn't ask questions. She simply helped Ethan carry the girl inside. The hospital was a blur of sterile white walls, the soft beep of machines, and the hustle of doctors and nurses going about their work. But in that moment, none of it seemed real to Ethan. All that mattered was the girl in his arms, the weight of her small body pressing against his chest, and the overwhelming sense of responsibility he suddenly felt. He had no idea what the future held for her, for him, or for the strange connection they seemed to have formed in just a few minutes. But one thing was certain. He couldn't just walk away from this. As the nurse wheeled the girl away to be treated, Ethan stood there, frozen in place. He looked down at his hands, which were still damp from holding her, For the first time in a long time, he felt something stir inside him, something warm, something human. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. It was the beginning of a change he didn't fully understand, but one that would shape everything that came after. Asterisk. Asterisk Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life. Forever. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. The following hours at the hospital were a blur for Ethan. He sat in the waiting room, his hands still shaking from the cold, and his mind racing. He had been in countless boardrooms, negotiating deals, discussing multi-million-dollar investments, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing had prepared him for the raw, desperate need he felt for this little girl, a stranger, who had appeared in his life, out of nowhere. As the time passed, the weight of his actions began to settle in. He had pulled her from the cold, had held her in his arms, and had promised to keep her safe. But he was only one man. What could he do for her? What was he supposed to do now? The hospital staff had assured him that the girl, whose name he had learned was Ava, was stable. She was cold and malnourished, but she would be fine. Still, as Ethan waited, he couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness that had settled in his chest. He had spent so many years focusing on his business empire, on the bottom line, on growth and success. But now, here was a child who needed him. His thoughts were interrupted when a nurse approached him. "Mr. Carrington," she said softly, "the girl is asking for you." Ethan stood up quickly, his heart racing. He had promised her that he wouldn't let anything happen to her, that she would be safe. But the reality of the situation was settling in. He was about to walk into the unknown. He followed the nurse down the sterile white corridors, his footsteps echoing in the silence. As they reached Ava's room, the door opened, and he stepped inside. Ava was sitting up in the bed, her small frame wrapped in a hospital blanket. Her wide, innocent eyes turned toward him as he entered, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. She looked so fragile, so vulnerable, and yet, there was a spark in her eyes that made Ethan's heart ache. "Are you feeling better?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Ava nodded slowly, her lips trembling slightly. "I'm hungry," she whispered. The simple request hit him like a punch to the gut. How could this little girl, who had already been through so much, still have the strength to ask for something as basic as food? Ethan could feel the guilt creeping in. He had everything, and she had nothing. But he would change that. He promised himself that. Without a word, Ethan walked over to the door and called the nurse. "Please bring her something to eat," he said. The nurse nodded and left the room. As Ethan turned back to Ava, he sat down beside her bed. "I'm going to take care of you," he said quietly. "You're safe now." Ava looked up at him, her eyes wide, with a mixture of fear and hope. "But where will I go? I don't have anyone," she whispered. Ethan's heart sank as he looked at her. He didn't know the answer, but in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let her go back to whatever had brought her to this point. He couldn't let her return to the streets, to the rain. He had the power to change her life. And he would. The nurse returned with a tray of food, and Ethan helped Ava sit up and eat. She was hesitant at first, picking at her food, But soon enough, she was eating with more confidence, her small hands grasping the utensils with care. As she ate, Ethan couldn't help but watch her. There was something so pure about her, something so innocent, and yet so full of pain. He had no idea what had happened to her or where she had come from, but he was determined to find out. As the meal came to an end, Ava finished her food and looked up at Ethan. "Will you stay with me?" she asked, her voice small but full of hope. Ethan's chest tightened at the question. He didn't have an answer, but he knew that he would never be the same after meeting her. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He wasn't sure what the future held for him or for Ava, but one thing was certain: he was going to be there for her. No matter what it took. The nurse came back to check on Ava, and after a brief conversation, Ethan was told that he could take her home when she was ready. He didn't know what that meant yet, but he knew that Ava wasn't going back to the streets, not while he had the power to protect her. As he left the hospital that night, carrying Ava in his arms once more, the rain had stopped. The city streets were calm, the stars beginning to peek out from behind the clouds. Ethan looked down at the little girl, her small hand gripping his sleeve, and felt the weight of the responsibility he had taken on. But he didn't mind. For the first time in years, he felt alive. And for the first time in years, he felt that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he had thought. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life. Forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. The next few days were a whirlwind for Ethan Carrington. After taking Ava home from the hospital, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing. He had never imagined his life would take this turn. But here he was, responsible for a child he barely knew. Ava had fallen asleep in his car during the drive back, her small body curled up against the leather seat, her breath steady and calm. Ethan glanced at her from time to time, his mind racing. He had a company to run, deals to close, and clients to please. But none of it seemed to matter as much as the little girl beside him. He hadn't asked for this responsibility, but it had been thrust upon him, and he wasn't about to turn his back on her. When they arrived at his apartment, Ethan carefully carried Ava inside. His home was massive, a reflection of his success. A modern, sleek space with glass walls that looked out over the city. Yet, as he walked through the door with Ava in his arms, the silence of the apartment hit him. It felt empty, cold, despite the warmth of the heating system. It was a far cry from the chaotic, vibrant home Ava had likely known. Ethan's life had always been about control, precision, and keeping everything in order. But now, with Ava, everything felt different. He placed her gently on the couch, wrapping her in a warm blanket. The reality of the situation hit him hard. He had no idea what to do next. He wasn't prepared to be a father. He barely knew how to take care of himself, let alone a little girl. But the weight of his promise to her, his promise to protect her, hung heavily on his shoulders. Over the next few days, Ethan tried his best to navigate this new life. He made sure Ava had food, clothes, and a place to sleep. He didn't know much about children, but he did his best to provide for her needs. Every night, he would sit with her on the couch, watching TV or reading her stories. He even tried to make her laugh, though the sound was foreign to his ears. It was hard, but it was also strangely fulfilling. Ethan found himself looking forward to these moments. Slowly, Ava began to open up to him. At first, she was quiet, reserved, as if afraid to get too close. She would ask him about his life, about his work, but she never said much about her own. Ethan didn't press her. He knew that she had been through a lot, and he didn't want to force her to relive any painful memories. But one night, as they sat together on the couch, Ava spoke up. "Do you miss your family?" she asked, her voice soft. Ethan was taken aback by the question. He hadn't talked about his family in years. His mother had passed away when he was young, and his father had never been part of his life. He had built his empire alone, with no one to lean on. He had never really missed anyone. But now, with Ava in his life, he felt something stir inside him. "I do," he said quietly, his voice catching in his throat. "I miss the idea of family. I miss having someone to care about. Someone to care about me." Ava nodded, her eyes wide and serious. "I used to have a family," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they're gone now. My mom, she's sick, and I don't know what happened to my dad. I don't know if he's still alive." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He couldn't imagine what Ava had been through, what she had lost. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her face the world alone. Not anymore. As the days passed, Ethan's bond with Ava grew stronger. He began to understand her in ways he never expected. She wasn't just a child he had taken in, out of obligation. She was a part of him now. She filled the emptiness in his life in a way he hadn't known was possible. He started to look forward to coming home, to seeing her face light up when he walked through the door. He began to realize that, in caring for her, he was healing parts of himself he had long buried. But even as their bond grew, Ethan knew there were still many challenges ahead. He still didn't know what had happened to Ava's family, or how he was going to make sure she had a future. But he was determined to figure it out. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was doing something meaningful with his life. He had spent so many years focused on work, on success, but none of it had brought him the happiness he now found in his small, quiet moments with Ava. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, watching a movie, Ava looked up at him with a small smile. "Thank you for taking care of me," she said softly. Ethan's heart swelled at her words. He had no idea what the future held. But in that moment, he knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Asterisk. Asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life. Forever. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan Carrington found himself settling into a routine with Ava. It was strange at first, having someone else in his life. His apartment, which had once felt vast and empty, now felt full, with the sound of Ava's laughter filling the space. It wasn't just the warmth of the apartment that changed, but the warmth in Ethan's own heart. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to his company or his wealth. But despite the changes, there were still moments when reality would creep in. Ethan had no idea what to do about Ava's mother, or about her past. Ava rarely spoke of it, and when she did, it was in hushed tones, as if speaking too much would make the pain real again. Ethan didn't want to push her, but he knew that eventually he would have to figure out what happened to her family. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Ava looked at him with her wide, searching eyes. "Do you think my mom is okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart clenched. He had been avoiding the question, not wanting to burden her with the uncertainty of it all. But he knew he couldn't avoid it forever. "I think your mom is going to be okay," he said, his voice steady. "She's in good hands." Ava nodded, but the worry in her eyes didn't fade. Ethan didn't blame her. The uncertainty had to be eating at her. He couldn't imagine what it would be like to grow up without knowing where your family was or if they were safe. "What do you think happened to her?" Ava asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He didn't know how to answer. He had no idea where Ava's mother was or what had happened to her. The truth was, he had been so focused on keeping Ava safe and providing for her that he hadn't stopped to think about what would happen next. "I don't know, Ava," he said honestly, "but I'll do everything I can to help you find out. You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together." Ava smiled faintly, her shoulders relaxing. She didn't speak again, but her expression softened, as if a weight had been lifted, even if only a little. The next morning, Ethan decided to take action. He called in a few favors and contacted some people who might be able to help track down Ava's mother. The search was difficult. There were no leads, no obvious places to look. But Ethan didn't give up. He couldn't. He owed it to Ava to find her mother, to give her the closure she so desperately needed. Weeks passed, and life continued as normal. Ethan kept working, but he also spent his free time thinking about the next steps. He kept researching, reaching out to anyone who might have information. One evening, as he sat at his desk, his phone buzzed. It was a message from one of his contacts. "We found her," it said. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He quickly dialed the number. After a few rings, a voice answered. "Mr. Carrington?" the voice said. "We have information about Ava's mother. She's at a shelter in New York City." Ethan didn't wait for more details. He grabbed his coat and rushed out of the office. The drive to the shelter felt like the longest of his life. His mind raced with possibilities. Would she be okay? What would Ava think when she saw her mother? He didn't know, but he was determined to find out. When he arrived at the shelter, he was met by a social worker who led him inside. The shelter was quiet, with a few people milling around, but there was a sense of calm in the air. After a few minutes, the social worker took him to a room where a woman was sitting, her face turned away from the door. "This is her," the social worker said softly. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The woman's hair was unkempt, and her clothes were worn, but there was something about her that made Ethan's heart break. This was Ava's mother. She looked up as they entered, her eyes wary. But when she saw Ethan, something softened in her gaze. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I'm Ethan Carrington," he said gently. "I'm here with Ava. She's safe now. She's been asking about you." The woman's eyes widened in disbelief. She stood up quickly, her hands trembling. "Ava, she's okay?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "She's doing well. She's with me now, and I promised her I would bring you back to her." The woman's face crumpled as she started to cry. Ethan didn't know what to say, but he reached out to comfort her. "You're not alone," he said softly. "We'll figure this out together." As he stood there, holding her hand, he knew that this moment would change everything for all of them. They were no longer just two strangers connected by circumstance. They were a family. And no matter what the future held, they would face it together. **Millionaire CEO. Saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life. Forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. It had been a few weeks since Ethan Carrington found Ava's mother at the shelter. The emotional reunion had been a turning point for both Ava and her mother. But it was also a turning point for Ethan. As the days went by, he found himself becoming more and more involved in their lives. It wasn't just about offering them a roof over their heads anymore. It wasn't just about making sure Ava had everything she needed. It was about truly being there for them, becoming a part of their world. Ethan's life, which had once been defined by ambition and solitary success, was now defined by something entirely different. Family. Ava's mother, whose name was Leah, had been struggling with a long-term illness that had left her unable to work or care for her daughter. She was deeply grateful for everything Ethan had done for her and Ava, and she made it clear that she wanted to be an active part of their lives. She wasn't looking for charity. She wasn't looking to be saved. She just wanted a chance to rebuild what she had lost. Ethan knew that things wouldn't be easy. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, and there were still many unknowns. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. He wasn't afraid of failure. He was determined to see this through, not just for Ava and Leah, but for himself as well. As time passed, Ethan found himself spending more time at home, less at the office. He was still the CEO of a massive company, but now he saw the value in balance. He saw the value in being present for the people who needed him. Ava had started school again, and Leah had begun taking small steps toward recovery. With Ethan's help, she found a support group for people dealing with chronic illness, and she started to regain some of the strength she had lost over the years. But it wasn't just about Leah's physical recovery. There was emotional healing happening as well. As they spent more time together, Ethan, Leah, and Ava began to heal in ways that none of them had anticipated. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Ava asked a question that Ethan wasn't sure he was ready to answer. "Do you think we're a family now?" she asked, her small voice soft but steady. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Leah, who was smiling at Ava, and then back at the little girl sitting across from him. The question was simple, but the weight behind it was immense. "I think we are," Ethan said quietly. "I think we've always been a family in a way. It just took us a little while to realize it." Ava smiled, and for the first time, Ethan saw a lightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. It was as if the burden she had been carrying for so long had finally been lifted. In that moment, Ethan realized that family wasn't just about blood. It wasn't about biology or circumstances. Family was about love, trust, and commitment. It was about choosing to be there for one another, through thick and thin. As the weeks went on, things continued to improve for all of them. Ethan found himself growing closer to Leah, and his bond with Ava grew stronger each day. He had never imagined that his life would turn out this way. He had never imagined that he would find himself in this role, taking care of a little girl and her mother. But now, he couldn't imagine his life without them. His world had expanded in ways he hadn't expected. And with every passing day, he was more certain that this was where he was meant to be. But even as things were looking up, there were still challenges to face. There were still questions about what the future would hold, about how they would navigate the obstacles in their path. But for the first time in a long time, Ethan was confident. He was confident that they could handle whatever came their way. He was confident because, for the first time in his life, he wasn't alone. He had Leah, he had Ava, and he would do whatever it took to make sure their family stayed together. One night, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Ava turned to Ethan and said, "I'm glad you're here." Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "I'm glad I'm here too," he said, "and I'm not going anywhere." For Ethan Carrington, life had come full circle. He had started out as a man who valued success above all else, but now he understood what truly mattered. Family, love, the people you choose to be there for. And as he looked at Ava and Leah, he knew that he had found everything he had been searching for. The future was still uncertain, but he was no longer afraid. Together, they would face whatever came next. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. Life had been moving forward with a sense of calm, but for Ethan Carrington, the path ahead was about to take another, unexpected turn. His relationship with Ava and Leah had grown stronger each day. They were more than just a mother and daughter who had come into his life. They were his family now, and every day spent together felt like a new chapter in a book he had never intended to write, but one he was determined to finish. Things were better. Ava was thriving in school, and Leah had slowly begun to regain her health, her strength, and most importantly, her sense of hope. Ethan had never imagined that his life would be so full, so busy with things he never thought he wanted. He had spent most of his years focused solely on his work, but now he was finding that his true wealth was found in the moments with Ava and Leah, their laughter, their struggles, and their triumphs. It wasn't always easy. There were still days when the weight of responsibility would press down on him. He had done his best to create a home for them, but there were moments when his doubts resurfaced. Could he truly be the father figure Ava needed? Could he be the support Leah was counting on? He wasn't sure, but every day, he chose to try. One evening, as they sat together around the kitchen table, something unexpected happened. Ava, who had always been the quiet one, suddenly spoke up. "Do you think I'll ever see my dad again?" she asked, her voice small but full of curiosity. Ethan was caught off guard by the question. He had never asked Ava much about her father, and she had rarely mentioned him. He knew the situation wasn't simple. Ava's father had left when she was very young, and there was no telling where he was or what had happened to him. Ethan glanced at Leah, who looked down, her expression pained. Leah hadn't spoken much about Ava's father either. "I'm not sure, sweetie," Ethan said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I'm here, and I'll always be here for you." Ava looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of longing and trust. "You're like a dad to me," she said quietly. Ethan's heart swelled at her words, but it was also a stark reminder of how much responsibility he had taken on. He wasn't just protecting her from the outside world, he was trying to be the person she needed in all aspects of her life. But the question lingered in his mind. Was he enough? Over the next few weeks, Ethan spent more time thinking about the future. He knew that he couldn't just be a figure in Ava's life. He had to be involved in every way possible. That meant being there for her education, being there for her emotional well-being, and making sure she never had to face the world alone. One afternoon, Ethan took Ava to her school. She had been doing well academically, and he was proud of how far she had come. But he knew that the real challenge was what lay ahead, helping her heal emotionally. They stood outside her school, and she looked up at him with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. "Thanks for bringing me today, Ethan," she said, her voice soft but full of sincerity. Ethan smiled, ruffling her hair. "You're welcome, kiddo. I'm proud of you." As they turned to leave, Ava stopped in her tracks. "You know, Ethan," she began, "I've been thinking. I don't think I need to find my dad anymore." Ethan raised an eyebrow in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Well," Ava said, her eyes searching for the right words, "I think I already have the dad I need." Ethan's chest tightened as the words sank in. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. But at the same time, he realized it was true. Ava had found something in him that he hadn't even known he had to give. Something that he hadn't realized he was missing, too. They walked back to the car in silence. But it was a comfortable silence. Ethan's heart was full, even as doubts lingered in the back of his mind. He wasn't perfect. He knew that. But in that moment, as they drove home together, he realized that maybe perfection wasn't what mattered. What mattered was showing up every day, no matter what. What mattered was choosing to be there for someone, to love them and support them through their journey. That night, as they all sat around the dinner table, Leah looked at Ethan with a sense of gratitude that spoke volumes. Ava was laughing about something, her eyes bright and carefree. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. This was his family, his home, and no matter where the road ahead would take them, he knew they would face it together as a family. He had found something he never knew. He was searching for something more valuable than any business deal or success. He had found love, purpose, and a connection that would last a lifetime. Asterisk asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl. Shivering in the rain, what the CEO did next changed her life. Forever. Asterisk asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. Months had passed since Ethan Carrington made the decision to take Ava and Leah into his life. Things had changed for all of them, but not always in the way Ethan had expected. While he had initially thought of their relationship as one of responsibility and duty, it had grown into something deeper. Ava was no longer just a child he was caring for. She had become the daughter he never thought he needed. And Leah, though still recovering from her illness, had become someone he could rely on, someone he never anticipated having in his life. The house, once filled with silence, now had a rhythm to it, laughter, chatter, and the occasional bickering that came with family life. Ethan found himself more relaxed, more at peace with his choices, but there were still moments of doubt. The weight of the responsibility he had taken on wasn't always easy to bear. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Leah could sense the tension in Ethan. He hadn't said much all day, and his normally calm demeanor had been replaced by an air of distraction. She caught his eye, and for the first time in weeks, she saw the vulnerability in him that he had kept hidden. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly, her voice gentle. Ethan looked at her, unsure of how to put his feelings into words. It had been a long day meetings at the office, a new project looming over him, and the weight of every decision he made seeming more significant than the last. He had started to feel like he was living two lives: the successful CEO that the world knew, and the man who had opened his heart to a little girl and her mother. He had wanted to make sure they were safe, happy, and healthy. But sometimes it felt like the pressure of it all was too much. "I'm just trying to figure it all out," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never imagined life would be this way. I don't know if I'm doing everything right." Leah smiled softly, understanding what he was going through. "You're doing just fine," she said. "You're here, you're present, and that's all that matters. Ava adores you, and she feels safe with you. That's what counts." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But what about the future? What happens when things get harder? When I have to make decisions that affect her life, her future, in ways I don't know how to handle?" Leah's smile faded slightly, but her eyes were filled with warmth. "You'll handle it, Ethan. You always do. And even when things are tough, remember that we're a family. We face things together." Her words sank into him like a quiet assurance. Ethan had spent so many years keeping people at arm's length, building walls around his emotions, and now it felt like they were all coming down. The challenges he faced now were different from the ones he had dealt with in the boardrooms. These challenges were about real lives, real people, people he cared about deeply. As the evening wore on, Ava came running into the room, a big smile on her face. "Guess what, Ethan? I got the highest score in the math test today," she announced proudly. Ethan's face lit up at her words. "That's amazing, kiddo," he said, his voice full of pride. Ava beamed, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I thought of you the whole time I was doing it. I wanted to make you proud." Ethan felt his heart swell. The thought of Ava, so young, thinking of him during something as simple as a math test, was a reminder of just how far they had come. The little girl who had once been so uncertain about the world was now thriving, and he couldn't have been more proud of her. As they finished dinner, Ava asked to play a game together. They sat around the living room, laughing and joking as they played, and for a few hours everything seemed perfect. It wasn't about the money, the business deals, or any of the pressures that had once defined Ethan's life. It was about the simple moments. The moments where they were just a family, enjoying each other's company. Later that night, after Ava had gone to bed, Ethan and Leah sat together in the quiet of the house. "You know," Leah said softly, "I never thought I'd see the day when Ava would be this happy again. She talks about you like you're her hero. You're her family now, whether you feel ready for it or not." Ethan smiled, his heart full. "I never thought I'd be someone's hero," he said, "but I'm trying to be the best I can for her. For both of you." Leah reached over, taking his hand in hers. "And that's all that matters. You're doing more than enough." As they sat there, in the quiet, Ethan realized something. He had spent so much of his life searching for meaning, for something to fill the void. He had found that meaning not in his business, but in the love he had for Ava and Leah. He had found his purpose, not in the numbers or the titles, but in being the person they needed him to be. And for the first time in a long time, he was at peace with that. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a family, and that was all he needed. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. A few months had passed since Ethan Carrington first took Ava and her mother, Leah, into his life. The challenges they had faced together had only brought them closer. They were now a family, one that was stronger, more resilient, and more bonded than Ethan had ever anticipated. Life wasn't always easy, but it was full of moments that made everything worth it. Ava had settled in at school, her grades improving with each passing day. Leah had begun attending regular therapy sessions to address both her physical health and the emotional toll the past few years had taken on her. And Ethan had finally started to feel like he wasn't just a businessman. He was a father, a protector, and someone who truly mattered to these two people. But as their lives settled into a routine, a shadow from Ethan's past was looming. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, Ethan returned home to find Ava sitting on the couch, her homework spread out in front of her. She was absorbed in her work, but when she saw him, she smiled brightly. "Hey, Ethan, I finished the project for school. I think it's good, but I want you to check it." Ethan smiled and walked over to her, sitting beside her on the couch. As he reviewed her work, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, seeing the name of his business partner on the screen. The message was simple. "We need to talk. There's something important." Ethan's stomach tightened. It wasn't often that business matters required his immediate attention in the evenings, and he knew that whatever was coming, it wouldn't be good. He didn't want to let the business world interfere with his time with Ava and Leah, but he knew he had to respond. "I'll be right back, kiddo," he said gently, standing up to take the call. "Just give me a minute." He walked into the other room, his mind already preoccupied with the conversation he was about to have. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "We've got a major issue with the investors," his partner replied, sounding tense. "There's a proposal they're pushing through, and it could affect the future of the company. We need to make a decision fast." Ethan took a deep breath. He had worked hard to build his company, but he had also promised to put his family first. As much as he knew the importance of his work, he couldn't let it come before the people who mattered most to him. "I'll handle it," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But we'll talk about this tomorrow. I'll be home in an hour." He ended the call, his mind already racing with the weight of the decision he would have to make. As he returned to the living room, he saw Ava still working, her face lit by the soft glow of the desk lamp. He sat down beside her again, watching her for a moment before speaking. "How's the project going?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Ava smiled, nodding. "I think I'm almost done. I'm just adding some last-minute details. It's a lot of work, but I think it'll turn out great." Ethan chuckled softly. "I'm sure it will. You always do your best." Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with curiosity. "Is something bothering you, Ethan? You've been quiet tonight." Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to burden her with his adult worries, but he also didn't want to hide anything from her. "Just some business stuff," he said, trying to sound casual. "It's nothing to worry about. You're doing great with your homework, though. That's what matters right now." Ava nodded, but Ethan could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. She was perceptive beyond her years, and he knew she could sense when something was off, but she didn't press him. And instead, they spent the rest of the evening working side by side. As the night wore on, Ethan's mind returned to the dilemma he was facing. The future of his company was at stake, and the decision he would make in the coming days could have far-reaching consequences. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized something. His priorities had shifted. Ava and Leah were his family now. They were the ones who mattered most, And no matter what happened with the company, he couldn't afford to lose sight of what was truly important. The next day, Ethan made his decision. He called his business partner and told him that he was stepping back from the deal. He would no longer let the demands of the company dictate his life. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Ava looked at him with a smile. "You seem happier today," she said, her voice light. Ethan nodded, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I am, kiddo," he said. "I'm happy because I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with you and your mom." Leah, who had been quietly listening, reached across the table and took his hand. "We're glad you're here too, Ethan. You've made our lives so much better." As they finished their meal, Ethan felt a deep sense of peace wash over him. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. He had found something more valuable than success or wealth. He had found his family, and they were the most important part of his life. Asterisk, asterisk, Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. The next few days were calm, almost too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. Ethan Carrington thought things were finally settling into place. Ava was happy. Leah was getting stronger. And his company was steady, even after he had stepped back from some of the heavier responsibilities. For the first time in years, Ethan felt free. Free from the endless meetings. Free from the pressure of numbers and profits. And free from the walls he had built around himself. But fate had a way of testing that freedom. One afternoon, as Ethan picked Ava up from school, he noticed something unusual. A black car parked across the street. It wasn't a car he recognized. But what caught his attention was the man inside. The stranger was watching closely, his eyes following Ava as she ran toward Ethan's car. Ethan brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he was overreacting. But the next day, the same car was there again, in the same spot. And again, the man was watching. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He didn't want to alarm Ava, so he stayed calm, greeting her with his usual warm smile and helping her into the car. But as he drove home, his mind raced. Who was that man? And why was he watching them? That night, Ethan couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. He sat in his office, staring out at the city lights, while Leah tucked Ava into bed. The memory of the black car lingered in his mind, gnawing at him. He picked up his phone and called one of his security contacts, a man he had worked with during corporate investigations. "I need you to look into something," Ethan said quietly. "There's been a car parked near Ava's school for 2 days now. Black sedan, tinted windows. Find out who it belongs to." His contact agreed immediately. "I'll handle it," he said. "You'll have an update by tomorrow." Ethan hung up, feeling a slight sense of relief. But that relief was short-lived. The next day, while waiting outside the school, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was his contact. "You're not going to like this," the man said. "The car belongs to someone named Martin Harris. Does that name mean anything to you?" Ethan's heart sank. He knew that name. Martin Harris was Leah's ex-husband, Ava's biological father. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He had never met the man, But Leah had mentioned him once, briefly, and from what she had said, he wasn't someone to be trusted. A man who had abandoned them, who had caused them pain, and who had vanished years ago. But now, he was back. That night, Ethan told Leah what he had learned. She froze, her face pale. "He can't be here," she whispered. "He can't take her away." Ethan reached for her hand, his voice steady but firm. "I won't let that happen. He left you and Ava. He has no right to come back now and cause trouble." Leah looked at him, her eyes full of fear. "He's unpredictable, Ethan. You don't know what he's capable of." Ethan met her gaze, his jaw set. "Then he's about to find out what I'm capable of." The following day, the black car appeared again. This time, Ethan didn't wait. He parked a few cars down, got out, and walked straight toward it. As he approached, the driver's window rolled down, revealing a man in his late 30s, unshaven and cold-eyed. "You must be Ethan Carrington," Martin said, his voice dripping with disdain. "The rich man who thinks he can buy himself a family." Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm the man who stepped up when you walked away," he replied. Martin smirked, leaning back in his seat. "I just want what's mine. My daughter." Ethan's blood ran cold. "You lost that right the day you left her in the cold," he said evenly. "You're not taking her away from us." Martin's smirk faded. His eyes darkened. "We'll see about that." Ethan didn't respond. He turned and walked back to his car, his mind already spinning with what needed to be done. He knew Martin wasn't going to give up easily. That night, he tightened security around their home. He installed cameras, alerted the police, and made sure Ava never walked home alone. Leah was terrified, but Ethan stayed calm. "He's not going to hurt you," he told her. "Not while I'm here." For days, there was silence. No sign of Martin, no strange cars, nothing. But Ethan knew better than to relax. He knew this wasn't over. Late one evening, as rain began to fall outside, the same kind of cold, steady rain that had started everything, Ethan stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through the drops. He thought of Ava, asleep in her room, and Leah, finally resting after weeks of worry. He made a silent promise to himself. Whatever happened, whatever came next, he would protect them, no matter what it took. He had already found his family once. He wasn't about to lose them now. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl, shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life. Forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. The days that followed felt like a tense calm. Ethan Carrington knew the storm wasn't over, but he was determined to keep his family safe. The memory of Martin Harris, Leah's estranged ex-husband, and Ava's biological father still haunted him. Despite the security measures he had put in place, the fear remained. Ava was still so young, so vulnerable, and the thought of losing her to someone like Martin made Ethan's stomach turn. Ethan spent every waking moment focused on keeping his promise to protect them. He worked hard during the day, then returned home each night, taking comfort in the sight of Ava's smile and Leah's gentle reassurances. But deep down, he knew the danger wasn't over. Martin Harris was a wild card, dangerous and unpredictable. Leah had been through too much already. Ethan couldn't imagine the pain she must have felt when Martin had abandoned her all those years ago. And now, he was back. threatening to take away the little girl who had filled Ethan's life with so much joy. Late one night, as Ethan and Leah sat together in the living room, the phone rang. Ethan's heart skipped a beat when he saw the caller ID. It was his security contact. "Ethan," the voice on the other end said, "we've got eyes on Martin. He's been spotted near your neighborhood." The news hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. "Where?" he asked, his voice low. "We're tracking him. He's been circling the area for the past few hours." The contact replied, "We think he's getting closer to your house. We're ready to act, but you need to stay inside." Ethan's blood ran cold. He didn't need to hear more. He immediately hung up and turned to Leah. "He's here," Ethan said, his voice tight with fear. Leah's face turned pale. "Martin," she whispered, shaking. "I knew he wouldn't just leave us alone." Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I'm not going to let him take you or Ava. I promise." They didn't waste any more time. Ethan instructed his security team to keep watch, while he and Leah secured the house. They made sure all the windows were locked, the doors double-checked. Ethan's mind raced with scenarios. What if Martin tried to break in? What if he was desperate enough to harm them? For a brief moment, Ethan considered going to the authorities, but he knew it would take too long. He couldn't wait for a police response. He had to act now. He paced the living room, keeping one eye on the front door and one on Leah. "We'll be okay," he said, though his voice betrayed him. "We've got this." Leah nodded, but her eyes were filled with worry. "What if he comes for Ava?" she asked, her voice shaking. "What if he tries to take her?" Ethan's heart tightened at the thought. He couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not ever. "He won't," Ethan said firmly. "I won't let him hurt you, Leah. I won't let him hurt Ava." They stayed up late into the night, waiting for the inevitable. As the hours passed, the tension in the air grew thicker. The silence of the house was deafening, only interrupted by the occasional sound of the wind outside or the rustling of trees. Ethan found himself on edge, every creak of the floorboards making him jump. Leah sat beside him, her hand still in his, her fingers gripping tightly. Just as Ethan was beginning to feel the weight of exhaustion settling in, there was a knock at the door. A knock so soft, so faint, that it might have been mistaken for the wind. But Ethan knew better. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it. Martin was here. He stood up slowly, motioning for Leah to stay quiet, stay out of sight. As he approached the door, he glanced out the peephole. His blood ran cold when he saw Martin standing outside, his face shadowed by the night. Ethan could feel the anger rising within him, the desire to confront the man who had caused so much pain in Leah's life. But he knew he had to stay calm. He couldn't give Martin the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. Slowly, Ethan opened the door, just wide enough to see Martin's face clearly. "What do you want, Martin?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the rage that bubbled beneath the surface. Martin's lips curled into a smirk. "I'm here to take what's mine," he said, his voice low and menacing. Ethan's heart raced. "You lost that right a long time ago," he replied firmly. "Ava is not going anywhere with you." Martin's eyes darkened. "You think you can just take her from me? You don't know anything about being a father. You're just playing house." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I'm not playing at anything," he said, his voice firm. "I'm her father now. I've been there for her. I've been there for Leah. You don't get to waltz back in and ruin everything." For a moment, neither man said a word. The tension between them was thick, the weight of years of betrayal and anger hanging in the air. Martin's expression shifted, his smirk fading. "You're making a big mistake," he muttered under his breath. "We'll see about that." Without another word, Martin turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Ethan stood there, his heart racing, his body tense. He watched until Martin was out of sight, then closed the door quietly, locking it behind him. He turned to Leah, his face pale but determined. "It's over," he said quietly. Leah stood there, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her. "No, thank you," he replied softly. "We're in this together, and I'm never letting go." Huh. Asterisk, asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. The weeks that followed Martin Harris's abrupt departure brought a newfound sense of peace for Ethan, Leah, and Ava. Ethan had thought the confrontation with Martin would be the beginning of a long battle, but in the days after that tense encounter, Martin seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The black sedan no longer appeared outside the house, and the unsettling feeling that had plagued Ethan's every step slowly started to fade. For the first time in months, the family settled into a quiet routine. Ava excelled in school, making new friends and talking about her dreams with a spark in her eyes that Ethan hadn't seen before. Leah's health continued to improve as well, and she became more active in the community, volunteering at a local shelter and attending support groups for those recovering from illness. But Ethan, ever vigilant, knew that the peace was fragile. He had seen the darkness in Martin's eyes, and he couldn't forget the threat that had been left hanging in the air. One evening, as he was finishing up work at his desk, the phone rang. Ethan froze when he saw the number on the screen. It was his security contact. "Ethan," the voice on the other end said, "I have news. We found Martin. He's in town, and we believe he's planning something." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, planning something?" he asked, his voice tight. "We don't know yet," the contact replied. "But we're monitoring him. He's staying at a hotel near your neighborhood. We just thought you should know." Ethan stood up from his desk, his mind racing. He had hoped that Martin was just a fleeting nightmare, someone who had come and gone. But now, it seemed like the storm wasn't over yet. He thought of Leah and Ava, both of them so vulnerable, so unaware of the danger still lingering in the shadows. He couldn't risk their safety. Not now. Not ever. Without wasting a second, Ethan called Leah into the room. When she saw the look on his face, she knew something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Ethan took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Martin's back," he said. "He's in town. We don't know what he wants, but we need to stay alert." Leah's face went pale. "I knew he wouldn't just go away," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What are we going to do?" Ethan looked at her, his resolve firm. "We're going to stay calm. I'll take care of it. We'll make sure you and Ava are safe. I won't let him hurt either of you." That night, Ethan took every precaution. He increased security at the house, arranged for extra surveillance around the neighborhood, and made sure that both Leah and Ava had a plan in case of an emergency. He didn't want to scare them, but he couldn't take any chances. Ava, ever the perceptive one, could sense that something was off. As Ethan tucked her into bed that night, she looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. "Is everything okay, Ethan?" she asked. Ethan smiled down at her, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "Everything's fine, kiddo," he said softly. "Just get some sleep. Tomorrow will be another great day." But even as he spoke the words, doubt lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't ignore the feeling that danger was closer than he wanted to admit. The following day, Ethan went to the hotel where Martin was staying, determined to confront him before anything could escalate. He wasn't sure what he expected, whether Martin would try to approach him again, or whether he was simply lingering in the area, waiting for the right moment. When he arrived, he scanned the lobby, looking for any sign of Martin. He saw nothing. Just a few hotel guests coming and going. No indication that anything was amiss. Ethan approached the front desk and asked the clerk if anyone by the name of Martin Harris had checked in recently. The clerk hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes. He checked in yesterday, but he hasn't left his room since then." Ethan's instincts screamed at him. Something wasn't right. He didn't believe in coincidences, and he had a bad feeling about Martin's presence in town. Ethan asked the clerk to provide him with the room number, and after a brief exchange, he was on his way up to the floor where Martin was staying. When he arrived at Martin's room, Ethan didn't hesitate. He knocked firmly on the door. A moment later, the door opened just slightly, and Martin's familiar, cold face appeared. "What do you want?" Martin asked, his voice low and hostile. Ethan didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know you're here for Ava," he said firmly. "And you need to leave now. You have no right to come near her or her mother. Stay away." Martin's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak for a long moment. Then, with a sneer, he stepped back from the door. "You don't get to tell me what to do," he muttered before slamming the door shut. Ethan stood there for a moment, his anger boiling over. He could feel the weight of the threat pressing down on him, but he wasn't afraid. He had made a promise to Leah and Ava, and he intended to keep it. He turned and left the hotel, knowing that it wasn't over yet, but also knowing that he wasn't going to let Martin win, no matter what. Back at home, Ethan reinforced their security measures and made sure Leah and Ava knew what to do in case Martin came near the house. They were prepared for anything. Ethan couldn't predict what Martin would do next, but one thing was certain. He would fight to protect his family with everything he had. Asterisk asterisk. Millionaire CEO saw a poor girl shivering in the rain. What the CEO did next changed her life. Forever asterisk asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. The storm that had been brewing for so long was finally over, and the calm that followed was one that Ethan Carrington had dreamed of but never thought would come. It wasn't an easy road to this moment. There had been fear, doubt, and countless nights where Ethan questioned his ability to protect those he loved. But in the end, he had kept his promise. Ava and Leah were safe. The threat of Martin Harris, Ava's biological father, had dissipated as quickly as it had arrived. After that tense confrontation at the hotel, Martin seemed to vanish into thin air, and there had been no sign of him for weeks. Ethan's team had monitored the situation closely, but Martin had stayed away, leaving Ethan to wonder if he had truly given up or if he was waiting for the right moment to strike again. But it didn't matter anymore. The time for fear had passed. Now, it was time for Ethan, Leah, and Ava to heal and move forward. One afternoon, as Ethan walked into the kitchen, he saw Ava sitting at the table, her schoolwork spread out in front of her. She looked up at him, her face lighting up with a smile. "Hey, Ethan. Guess what?" she said, her excitement contagious. Ethan grinned. "What's up, kiddo? I got an award at school today." "For being the most improved student in math," she exclaimed. Ethan's heart swelled with pride. "That's amazing, Ava. I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice full of admiration. Ava beamed, clearly enjoying the attention. But then she tilted her head, her expression turning more thoughtful. "You know, Ethan," she said softly, "I never thought I'd be good at math. But I kept trying, and I didn't give up. It's like you always tell me. No matter how tough things get, you just have to keep going." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. Ava's words hit him harder than he expected. In that moment, he realized how much she had grown, how much she had learned, not just academically, but emotionally. She had overcome so much already, and she was still only a child. He reached over, ruffling her hair. "I'm really proud of you, Ava. You're amazing," he said. Ava's face softened as she looked up at him. "You know, Ethan, I've been thinking a lot about what you said when you first came into my life. You said you were going to take care of me, and you did. You really did. You're like my dad now." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect her to say that. It was one thing to care for her, to love her, but to hear her call him her dad, that was something else entirely. He felt a mix of emotions: joy, love, but also a deep sense of responsibility. He wasn't her biological father, but in his heart, he knew he was the father she needed. "Ava, you mean the world to me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm honored to be here with you and your mom. You're both my family now, and I'll always be here for you." Ava's eyes sparkled with happiness, and for a brief moment, everything seemed perfect. Leah walked into the room just then, a warm smile on her face. She had heard the conversation, and as she looked at Ethan and Ava, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. "I'm proud of both of you," she said, her voice soft. "You've come so far, and I've never felt more blessed to have you both in my life." Ethan reached out, taking Leah's hand. "We're a team," he said, "and no matter what happens, we'll always have each other." As the days passed, life continued to unfold in ways Ethan had never imagined. He spent more time with Ava and Leah, taking long walks in the park, enjoying quiet evenings together at home, and celebrating the small victories that life had to offer. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly at peace. He had found what he had been searching for all along: love, family, and a sense of belonging. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, watching a movie, Ava leaned against Ethan's shoulder, and Leah rested her head on his chest. The warmth of their presence, the simplicity of the moment, filled Ethan's heart with a sense of contentment he had never known before. He had once lived a life of ambition, constantly striving for more, believing that success was the only thing that mattered. But now, he knew the truth. Success was nothing without the people you loved by your side. As the credits rolled on the screen, Ethan smiled to himself, knowing that no matter what challenges the future might hold, he was exactly where he was meant to be. He had found his family, Ava and Leah, and together, they would face whatever came their way. And in that moment, surrounded by the people he loved, Ethan Carrington knew that he was the richest man in the world.